Hi, welcome to Praying with Paint, an introduction to icons. First, what is an icon? At their simplest, they're merely images of Jesus, one of the saints from Christian history or the scriptures, or even some manifestation of God. The word icon itself is simply Greek for image. Icons are deeply Christian and an important part of the whole Christian story. They come to us out of the heritage of Eastern Christianity. You may know of Greek or Russian icons. You may too know how important Orthodoxy, that Eastern branch of Christianity, the importance that they place upon icons. Icons are theologically grounded in Eastern understandings of Christian theology, especially in their Christology, or their thinking about who Jesus is today and who he has been over the course of the last 2 millennia. As such, icons are at the core of prayer life for millions of faithful Christians. It would not be too much of an exaggeration to say that what Bible study is for the Protestant, the Rosary is for the Roman Catholic, contemplation of an icon is for an Orthodox Christian. But wait a minute, don't icons violate the second commandment? No, because their understanding is clear that icons are not worshiped, but instead venerated, given a high degree of honor. The East also points out that the incarnation of Jesus changes everything. For just as God became human, it also means that God uses the material substance of the world to express himself. How is all this possible? Well, part of it has to do with a difference in physics. The Eastern Church still theologically relies upon Platonic physics. Plato didn't understand the physical world as we do. In his world, objects cause the impressions we receive, instead of passively reflecting light. This means that the image is the real thing, not a reflection of another reality. Now, without getting too deep into the weeds about this, just a quick word or two about how this understanding of physics works. In our Western understanding of physics, which is more Aristotelian, light comes down from an external source, such as the sun, hits an object in the world, represented here by the round red dot, bounces off that object, and is reflected into the sensory apparatus of an observer, here represented by the blue bar. That observer's senses take in the reflected light, and the brain assembles it into an understanding of the reality of an object in the world. Plato's physics don't work like that, however. Instead of light bouncing off an object, the reality of the object is understood to be apprehended directly by the mind. In other words, knowledge, something that is sure and certain, can only be obtained by reaching out with the operations of the mind, directly apprehending the true nature of the object, its essential and eternal form. This is direct apprehension and does not require the use of the senses. Rather, it's from the mind. Sensory data can be received by the observer directly from the object, but this only gives knowledge of the substance of the object, its form, its color, its transitory nature. Sensory data is misleading because you and I occasionally see things that we know just really aren't there, a mirage or an illusion. Sensory data does not give knowledge of anything real, but only of things transitory and changing. So to those who can use their understanding, their mind, the power of their spirit This becomes not an image of Jesus, but it is a true manifestation of the reality of Jesus with us. I like to call icons a kind of spiritual stained glass. Another way to say this is that the icon gives shape and color to a spiritual reality. Think about how stained glass works. There's light source behind the glass, and as the light comes through the colored glass, the glass gives shape and color to the light, which we assemble into an image. So in this Platonic understanding of the world, the icon gives shape and color to the real, to the spiritual presence which shines through. What does this mean? It means you can treat an icon as you would a real person right there with you. You could talk with an icon, not like talking with an object. You'd be talking directly to the person. You could ask questions of them, even receive an answer. No, not an out loud voice, although cases of religious miracles are occasionally recorded. You can share, sing, tell stories, simply be with the figure represented in the icon. It's a little bit like just spending time with someone you love. Now, icons do have some common features that aid in their appreciation. There are several strong traditions around the practice of producing icons, around the practice of praying with icons. One thing, for example, is that figures are fairly recognizable. Their features are repeated from icon to icon. For example, Peter usually is shown with white, curly hair, a full beard. Paul has a receding hairline and dark hair. Here are two icons. Peter on the left, you can see his white graying hair, white beard. Paul on the right, the receding hairline, the darker hair. Any icon of Peter or Paul won't look exactly like these, but it will follow the general canons of presentation. Here are 5 icons of Peter, painted in radically different times. Upper left and lower right, very modern. The one in the middle, very ancient. The one in the lower left is from a very different strain or tradition of iconography. But in all these depictions of Peter, you'll see he's got the curly hair, graying hair in the upper left, completely white in the lower left, lower right. Now on the lower right, you'll see that Peter is embracing someone with a receding hairline and dark hair. Who might that be? It's our friend Paul. Here are 5 icons of Paul, again, painted in radically different places and different times, all showing that receding hairline, the dark hair, the full beard, wrinkles across the forehead. Now, icons don't claim to be historically reliable visuals. We don't really know what Peter looked like, or we don't have first-hand indications of what Jesus looked like. But they use common facial features which have symbolic meanings, often, and most often, clues to their character. Paul, for example, bears the mark of ancient wisdom. That receding hairline means he's advanced in years and has seen a lot. He has wrinkles across his forehead, meaning that he is worried over the fate of those young churches that he planted. Peter shows the rough and tumble nature of a common fisherman. The first step to really learning about any individual icon is simply to study one. Learn your way around it. Paying attention to all of these little details is perhaps the most difficult part of praying with paint. For example, look at this next icon for just a few moments. Now, if we ask the title, did you catch who this is? Icons almost always have a title, sometimes in English, sometimes not, but they will tell you who the person is. This person's holding something. Did you notice what it was? Did you notice what he was wearing? Is he older, younger? Can you tell what his job is just from the way he's dressed? Or how he is holding his hand and what that might mean? What is that on his left arm? Is there a reason for using these particular colors? Could you tell about what kind of people might be really attracted to this person? So, for example, I don't know a lot of Russian, but I can understand just enough to begin to pick up the AKOLAS in the title, A being the sound for Nicholas. I also see that he's wearing the pallium. That's that white stole with the black crosses about his shoulders. And I know that that was the mark of a bishop in former times. He's wearing purple, another indication that he's a bishop. And we remember that Bishop Nicholas of Myra, the forerunner of the modern day Santa Claus, was indeed a bishop of the Eastern Church. Here he's presented as a wise, elderly man, notice that receding hairline and the gray hair, who has a kind of kindness that he showers upon the people about him. You'll notice his right hand is raised in blessing. In a later video, we'll talk just about that gesture and the deep theological meanings that's all in how he's holding his hand. In the left arm, it looks like a book. 4 stones with a big center stone lead me to think that this is a book of the 4 Gospels, or maybe a book of the New Testament. In any case, probably a collection of the scriptures. And then he seems to have either a towel or even a prayer shawl hanging off his left arm. I'm not sure which one this is, but in either case, it shows either his devotion to serving his people or his constancy in prayer for them. Details matter, especially artistic ones, when you look at an icon. Here's another icon of St. Nicholas. This is a more modern one done here in the United States, and you'll notice that the title is done in English. It says right there, St. Nicholas. But what's really interesting about this particular icon, I think, is its radical adoption of a common feature of icons, reverse perspective. In most Western art, the perspective is that objects that are further away from the viewer recede into the horizon. And for those of you who have artistic training, you may even know about the vanishing point, a common feature of Western perspective. But in the East, they paint objects very flat. Look at Nicholas's robe here. Can you see how flat it is? There are no features, no depth, no rounding to the shoulders, no jutting out of the arm, of the robes around the arm. Instead, it's almost like the robe is just a sheet of wallpaper. But if you look at the Bible, the scriptures that he's carrying in his left hand, that's at an angle, almost like it's coming off the board out toward us, the viewers. This is called reverse perspective. Another common feature in icons is that they don't show an external light source, but rather an internal one. That is to say, it doesn't look like there's a light to the left or to the right shining on the figures, and some of the figures are in shadows. Rather, since Jesus is the light of the world, all of the figures in iconography look as though they have the light of the world within them. This is a depiction of Jesus after the resurrection, raising up Adam and Eve and bringing them into the new life. But you'll notice that all the figures practically glow with a kind of brilliance. Icons are almost never placed in frames. Instead, the border serves as the demarcation between the non-sacred space around the icon and the sacred space depicted within the icon. But borders are meant to be broken in iconography. If you'll look at this icon of the Nativity, Mary having just given birth to her infant son Jesus in a small cave, you'll notice that the mountains at the top cross the borderline and almost seemingly extend out into the real world. This is an early form of trying to depict three-dimensionality. The key to understanding this is that the viewer is understood to be a part of the icon. Notice Mary's robe in the lower right-hand corner is also crossing the border, almost like we could reach out and touch it. We see Mary and Jesus and are brought into the same sacred space which they inhabit. Archbishop Rowan Williams, former Archbishop of Canterbury, had a deep understanding of the importance of what it meant to pray with an icon. He's written 2 wonderful short collections of meditations on icons, and this passage on praying with an icon, I think, really captures something deep and profound about our experience when meditating with an icon. Archbishop Williams said, "People have often underlined the fact that prayer is less a matter of simply talking to Jesus than of letting Jesus talk to the Father in us. Sometimes it makes sense, certainly, to talk to Jesus, to turn to Jesus as Savior and friend in the most straightforward way, and He is there to hear. But these depictions, these icons, recall us to what the friendship and saving work of Jesus is for. It is to bring us into the life that He lives and the prayer that He prays. If that means, as it clearly does, that Jesus will not always be a distinct and comforting presence before our eyes, this is not a mark of spiritual failure. We are being taken gradually into the deep mysteriousness of His praying to the Father, a mysteriousness that we can only experience for a lot of the time as darkness and pathless desert. And when we find the hiddenness removed for some instant, it is not to reassure us that we have made a success of things, but to give a hint of the wealth of Christ's life in us, a kind of momentary overhearing of the Word returning in power to the Father. Remember that earlier icon of Jesus raising up Adam and Eve out of their graves? We conclude this short little presentation by showing this mural from an Episcopal church up in Dallas, Church of the Resurrection. This is a depiction of the resurrection of Jesus. And in our next video, we'll take some of the features in this icon and talk about things that they teach us about Jesus, about the resurrection, and about ourselves.